Paratmanamekam jagadbijamadyam niriham nirakaram omkar vedyam yato jayate palyate yena vishvam tamisham bhaje liyate yatra vishvam Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmasvarupini avatar varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. My very reverential pranams to Swami Sarvalokanandaji Maharaj, Swami Bodhamayanandaji Maharaj, Tan Mahimanandaji Maharaj, and my pranams to all of you. God in so many forms, Brahman in so many forms. This is going to be the main topic today that we are going to discuss, actually speaking. Because when we talk about the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the essential idea of Sri Ramakrishna's gospel is only this much. What we are experiencing here, it's all nothing but Brahman in so many forms. We shall slowly get into the depth of this topic. It's a very beautiful topic that Sarvalokanji has given to me, that Sri Ramakrishna's gospel is the new Veda. What do we mean by saying that Sri Ramakrishna's gospel is the new Veda? Let us try to understand this point. There are some technicalities in it. Swami Vivekananda has written one article, which is there in the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. The title of the article is Hinduism and Sri Ramakrishna. I suggest all of you should read this article to understand the subject of the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna being the new Veda. Now, when we say that Sri Ramakrishna's teaching is the new Veda, in what sense? Let us try to understand what Vedas mean. First, we have to understand what is the meaning of Veda. See, we are equating Sri Ramakrishna's teachings with the Veda. But what do we mean by Veda? Every Hindu should know that the whole system of Hinduism stands on this system of thought which springs from Vedas. So what do we mean by Vedas? So Vedas means what? I'm going to touch upon certain technical aspects, but there is nothing to worry about. I'll simplify the whole thing to make it comprehensible to all of us. Vedas, in a very technical sense, it means Ananta Jnana Rashi or Ananta Shabda Rashi. What does it mean? It means Vedas, they are a treasure of supersensuous, universal truths and principles. Once again, I repeat this point. Vedas means it is a collection or treasure of supersensuous. The word supersensuous is very important. Supersensuous, universal principles and truth. Number two, these universal supersensuous truths and principles, they don't have an origin. These truths and principles, they exist eternally. They are beginningless and they are endless. Second point, it's a very important point. It doesn't have an origin. It didn't come into existence at a certain point of time. Third point, it doesn't have an origin in any human being or in any personality. Once again, let me repeat this point. This is a very important point. It doesn't origin from any personality. The moment some teachings which proceed from personality, it belongs to a different category. So technically speaking, Vedas refer to those supersensuous universal truths which are existing in God's mind, the cosmic mind. And it is said that it is in and through these Vedas that God is creating, sustaining, and dissolving this entire Srishti and Prapancha. In every cycle, God is creating everything out of the Vedas. Vedas means these supersensuous truths and principles which is eternally residing in the cosmic mind of God. And the authority of the Vedas are universal. It is applicable to everyone at all points of time, no matter to which religion you belong to, no matter which race you belong to, no matter which language you speak, no matter which religion you follow. The principles of the Vedas are applicable to the entire humanity. We'll see what is the meaning of this. It is not localized, it is not limited to one country or one race. Every human being, no matter where he or she is existing, everybody is under or governed by the principles of Vedas. Now, last point. When we talk about the Vedas, we should understand, this is very important. By Vedas, we should understand it is not a book. It is not a book in the sense that Bhagavad Gita is a book, or Bible is a book, or Quran is a book. Vedas is not a book, as we understand. As I said before, it is the supersensuous truths and principles eternally existing without beginning and without end. It is existing in the mind of so-called Ishvara, from where the so-called Srishti, Sthiti and Pralaya goes on. Second point. Now these so-called supersensuous truths and principles which we are talking about, these truths were realized by some people. You know, truths belong to two planes. One is the truths which we cognize through our sensory system. Through our sense organs, you see, we are seeing this world, and there is certain element of truth here in the so-called empirical plane. So truths which are discovered through the senses, they are what is known as modern science or physical science. And truths which are cognizable through the supersensuous power of yoga is what is known as Vedas. So when we talk about Vedas, it refers to something which cannot be sensorily cognized. It can be cognized only by the supersensuous power of yoga. Now, interestingly, all of us have got the supersensuous power of yoga inherent in us, everyone. But somehow, for some reason or the other, we are not utilizing it, we have not awakened it, we have not cultivated it. Anybody who awakens and cultivates the supersensuous power of yoga, he or she will also come face to face with these universally existing, eternally existing, supersensuous truths and principles. So truth belongs to two planes. the sensory plane and trans-sensory plane. The truths which belong to the trans-sensory plane is what is known as Vedas, and those people who came face to face with these universally existing truths and principles through the supersensuous power of yoga, those people are known as rishis. Beautiful term. Rishi means nothing else but mantra drashtaha. Those who have directly, in a supersensuous manner, immediately, without the mediacy of the so-called mind and the sense organs, they have experienced these truths and they convey it to the humanity. Rishis. Now, in this sense, if you just look into the whatever we have heard till now, from this sense, in a very literal sense, no book can be equated with the Veda. I am using the term equated. See, in our spiritual history, one of the greatest books of all times is Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Even Srimad Bhagavad Gita cannot be equated with the Vedas. Gita also belongs to the category of Smriti. All those teachings which had an origin in a person, it cannot be Vedas. Vedas are apaurusheya. It doesn't have an origin in a person, and it is not originating at a particular point of time in history. So in a very technical sense, Sri Ramakrishna's gospel cannot be equated with the Vedas. It belongs to a totally different order of reality. As I said, any teaching which is coming out of a personality at a particular point of time, that cannot be equated with Veda in a very strict and in a literal sense. Now, then does it mean that these great teachings of, say, whether it is the teachings of Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, which comes under the category of Smriti Shastras, is it not important? The great teachings of Shankaracharya, is it not important? The great teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. See, when we say that it is not, in a very technical sense, we can't equate it with the Vedas, it is in no way diminishing the importance of gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. So Swami Vivekananda says, Vedas are apaurusheya. They don't originate from a person, or they don't come into existence at a certain point of time. They are eternally existing. Then what is the place of these great teachings of great masters like Sri Krishna, Shankaracharya and Sri Ramakrishna? They are all the commentaries on the Vedas. What is Sri Krishna's teaching in the Bhagavad Gita? It is one of the finest commentaries on the Vedas. All the writings of Shankaracharya, what is it? They are one of the finest commentaries on the principles of the Vedas. And Swami Vivekananda says, Sri Ramakrishna's gospel should be considered to be the most modern commentary on the Vedas. This is how we should understand gospel of Sri Ramakrishna being Veda, not in a literal sense, but in Sri Ramakrishna's teachings we find the principles, the eternal, universal principles found in the Vedas completely embodied. Every word of it. When we are reading Bhagavad Gita or Shankaracharya's works or Sri Ramakrishna's gospel, we should remember that it is nothing but the retold, represented version of the principles of the Vedas. Krishna was a great reteller and representer of the universal principles and truths existing in the Vedas. Shankaracharya was a great reteller and representer of the great universal truths existing in the Vedas. Sri Ramakrishna was again one of the greatest representer and reteller of the principles and truths existing in the Vedas. Just like I always say, If somebody is a very good cricketer, say somebody is a very good batsman, we say that he is the present day Sachin Tendulkar. Is it not? Or we can say that if somebody is a very good singer, say some woman is a very good singer, exceptionally good singer, we say that she is the present day Lata Mangeshkar. Does it mean that she is Lata Mangeshkar? She is not Lata Mangeshkar. But her exceptional quality of singing, through that we say that she is the present day Lata Mangeshkar. So by not equating her with the prototype, her value is not diminishing. Similarly, by saying that in a technical sense, Ramakrishna's gospel is not exactly Vedas, but its value is not diminishing. It is extremely important work in the modern times. As I said, as Sarvalokanji had pointed out in his introductory speech, who can understand the principles of the Vedas? If you directly go into the Vedas, you need to have the knowledge of Sanskrit. If you have to read the Upanishads, you need the help of many acharyas, otherwise you won't be able to decipher the meaning, the internal, intricate, essential, the core ideas of the Upanishads. You need some teacher who can guide you. Without the acharya's guidance, you will not be able to grasp or comprehend the true meaning what Upanishads talk about. Now, those very immortal principles and truths which the Vedas and the Upanishads embody, Sri Ramakrishna puts it in a very simple, easily understandable language. That's why even if you don't know, if you don't have the knowledge of Sanskrit or the technicalities of the Shastras, anybody who is reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, actually speaking, when you're reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you are actually touching the universal principles and truths embodied in the Vedas. So in a very technical sense, we cannot say that Sri Ramakrishna's gospel is, you can't equate it with the Vedas, because Vedas, they belong to a different order of reality. And at the same time, we have to say that it is the modern Veda in the sense that it is embodying within itself all the universal eternal principles that we find in the Vedas and the Upanishads. Now, what are the eternal teachings of the Vedas and the Upanishads? Let us just touch upon a few points to understand how Sri Ramakrishna once again retells and represents those very universal ideas and truths in his beautiful, simple, colloquial Bengali language. And today, Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna has been translated into dozens of languages, both Indian language as well as foreign languages. People all over the world, they are getting illumined by reading the words of Sri Ramakrishna. It's happening. Beautiful. It is awakening the people to take recourse to the path of spirituality, because it's the spirituality alone which makes the human life meaningful. Without spirituality, what is the meaning of human life? It is zero. If spiritual quest is not there, unless the spiritual quest starts in our life is just nothing. It is absolutely speaking zero. The real life begins when the spiritual quest begins, or when this quest or investigation into gaining the knowledge of the ultimate reality has been initiated. Initiation is a beautiful term. Initiation, Diksha. When this so-called, this quest or the search for the ultimate reality has been initiated, and we begin to walk on that path, then and then alone we have begun to live. Before that, we are not even alive. Life in body and the senses is not life at all. The true life begins when your spiritual consciousness begins to awaken. Before that, we are all just like anything else, animals and plants. They're also so-called they're alive, but the real life starts when we begin to consciously understand our true nature. It's a wonderful, what should I say, a shift from one way of living to a totally different way of living, based upon highest truths. Now, what does Vedas teach us? Let me just sum up some of the points. If you just squeeze all the Vedic teachings, you will see that The Vedas tell us only one thing. Brahma Satyam, Jagat Mithya, Jivo Brahmaiva, Nabaraha. The whole of the Vedic wisdom is squeezed in these two sentences which Shankaracharya so beautifully presents to the humanity. The simply put, what the Vedas have to teach us is that there is only one reality, which is Brahman, and our idea or our perception, the thought that a second thing called world is existing. A second thing called world which is separated from that supreme reality Brahman, this idea is based upon ignorance and avidya. That's not possible. It is owing to avidya that we think that a second reality called Brahman world is existing. Brahman alone is existing. Even now, this very moment where we are sitting and discussing this point, somebody is talking to you, you are listening to me. Even in this very moment, actually speaking, what is existing is Brahman, and Brahman alone is existing. For that, we need to develop a deeper insight and perception. We have that capacity, only we have not utilized it, we have not awakened it. If we awaken it, the Upanishads say, you can get it. Now, this is what Sri Ramakrishna says in his gospel. Just now what I said, Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. Brahman alone is true, the world is illusory. You open the pages of Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, in every other page you will find Sri Ramakrishna hammering this idea repeatedly. What is the idea? God alone is real, everything else is illusory. God alone is real, everything else is illusory. God alone is real, everything else is illusory. Throughout the gospel, you will find this idea repeatedly reiterated by Sri Ramakrishna, because for him, Brahman alone existed. He lived in that consciousness. For him, there was nothing called world. He always was, and he was living in this one Brahman consciousness. Upanishads, Vedas, embodied in the life of Sri Ramakrishna and in his teachings. Second point. The Upanishads and the Vedas have to teach us that. If you read the Upanishads carefully, you will find that in the Upanishads all the standpoints are there. You will find the standpoints of Dvaita also there. You will find the standpoints of Vishishtadvaita also in the Upanishads. And ultimately you will find the standpoint of Advaita. All the 3 points you will find in the Upanishads. And the main intention behind presenting all these different standpoints in the Upanishads is only one. When the Upanishad is talking about Dvaita and Vishishtadvaita, it is not for the sake of proving that that is the ultimate reality. Upanishads speaks about these lower standpoints only to help the jiva slowly rise and come to the ultimate reality, which is Advaita and Advaita alone. Sadeva Somya idam agra asit ekame vadvitiyam brahma neha nanasti kinchanaha mrityosa mrityam gacchati yah iha naneva pashyati yatra hi dvaitam eva bhavati. All thundering statements of the Upanishads which talk about the ultimate reality being Advaita and Advaita alone. Now look into Sri Ramakrishna's life, his teachings. What is Sri Ramakrishna's teaching? Shivagyane, Jiva Seva. Everybody is divine, every man is divine, every woman is divine, everything is divine. What is actually existing is divinity and divinity alone and nothing else. Our idea, our perception that there is existing separate, different from divinity, it is based upon avidya. So Sri Ramakrishna constantly teaches and gives us this vision that everybody is divine. It is the Vedic teaching, coming from his own experience. What the Vedas and Upanishads have spoken about, it is Sri Ramakrishna's first-hand aparoksha anubhuti. He is teaching Shivagyane Jiva Seva. Everybody is divine, every man is divine, every woman is divine. That's why we have to say that Sri Ramakrishna's teaching is one of the finest commentaries on the Vedas, the modern commentary. Then, this supreme divinity which the Upanishads and the Vedas talk about, this divinity which Sri Ramakrishna talks about. How are we going to realize it? What is the way? See, the connection between the teachings of the Vedas and Sri Ramakrishna's teachings. What is the way? What is the upaya? Upaya is what? Only one. Only one. What is that upaya? What the Vedas, in a thundering voice, it declares to the humanity, Tyagena eke amritatva manushuhu. It is only by Tyaga and Tyaga alone that you can realize or experience this supreme reality called Brahman or God. Without Tyaga, it is impossible. Tyagena eke. It is only by Tyaga, unless we renounce. Renunciation. Renunciation is the very cornerstone or the pillar on which this quest for the supreme reality stands. Without renunciation, nothing is going to happen. This is the ultimate conclusion of the Vedas. Renunciation. Renunciation of this Jagat which is Mithya. Unless we turn our attention from this side to what is inside us, we can never understand what the truth is. Now, this Vedic teaching of renunciation, just look into the life of Sri Ramakrishna and his teachings. Every page of gospel, what does he teach? Kama kanchana tyaga, kama kanchana tyaga, kama kanchana tyaga. Realizing God alone is the goal of human life. And how do you do that? By renouncing lust and greed, by renouncing lust and greed, by renouncing lust and greed. Every page, every other page has got this message of the Vedas that unless you turn away from lust and greed, there is no question of understanding what the ultimate reality is. It is impossible. Sri Ramakrishna beautifully says, you repeat Gita 10 times, 20 times, it will become Tyagi. It will become Tyaga. Sri Ramakrishna very beautifully says, what is the essence of Gita? It is Tyaga. Why? Jagat is Mithya. Why Tyaga? Because Jagat is Mithya. It cannot be true. It cannot be true. These are all indubitable convictions which every so-called the seeker of truth should cultivate within himself or herself. Jagat is Mithya. It cannot be true. The more we cling to this Mithya Jagat, the more we suffer. All sufferings is owing to our unrestrained clinging to this Mithya Jagat. We need to develop detachment and renunciation. Tyaga. We are talking about Tyaga. Now, there is not much time. You can have several sessions to discuss how the spirit of Tyaga was manifested in this great, great life of Sri Ramakrishna. He was the Tyaga Murti, the very image of Tyaga. What a wonderful thing. I always tell the devotees, see, we have several volumes of Sri Ramakrishna's life. Several volumes have been written. Actually speaking, his life can be summed up in only two things. He knew nothing but Brahman and Brahman alone, and his extreme distaste or aversion for everything that is worldly. Sri Ramakrishna's life can be, actually speaking, summed up in these two things. What do we find in Sri Ramakrishna's life? Apart from extreme, I am using the term extreme, he just could not stand anything worldly. He is setting up a standard, the highest standard which Vedas have talked about. Tyagena eke amritatva manushu. Now we may be very far away from that kind of a Tyaga, but still he is setting the standard, the benchmark, so that we can at least try to approximate it, come close to it, to whatever extent it is possible from our side. Then, next point. In the Vedas you will find Anubhuti is stressed repeatedly. Experience, not bookish knowledge. Throughout the Vedas, you will find this stress coming repeatedly. Anubhuti, experience, not bookish knowledge, not verbal knowledge, not conceptual knowledge. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, you will find this wonderful idea coming. What is that? Yat sakshat apurokshat brahma tanme vyachakshasva. There's a beautiful dialogue between Yajnavalkya and his disciple, where it is said that don't talk to me about all conceptual ideas of God. I don't want all these imaginary ideas of God. I want that which is experienceable, that which can be experienced, anubhuti. Now look into Sri Ramakrishna's life, how he reflects this Vedic idea of anubhuti in his life. Even when he was small, we know when he was asked to go to the school, he said, what shall I do with this bread-winning education? It's all words and words and words and alone. I want something which will fulfill my heart forever. Anubhuti, beautiful. Shudhu boy podle hobe na. Nothing happens only by, that doesn't mean that you're not going to read books, okay? Yeah? Don't commit that mistake. We have to read the books, but we are reading the books to get inspired to walk on the path of experience, anubhuti. We have to experience the truth. The truth is inside us. Already it is there. We need to strive to experience it. Anubhuti, which Sri Ramakrishna so beautifully shows in his life. Sadhana, the importance of spiritual practices, which is so much emphasized in the Vedas and the Upanishads. Last one more point. This is very important. We know Sri Ramakrishna talks about harmony. Samanvaya. Is this Sri Ramakrishna's new teaching? It is the eternal teaching of the Vedas. Samanvaya is the idea of the Vedas. Samanvaya eva sadhu, samgachadvam, samvadadvam. These are the great utterance which we find in the Vedas. And throughout the Vedas you will find in the Upanishads this wonderful standpoint of harmonizing everything. And how is this harmonizing possible? On what basis? It's a very important thing. All the so-called different conflicting thought systems, which are the lower picturization of reality, these things can be harmonized only from one standpoint. And that standpoint is the standpoint of Advaita. It is only from the standpoint of Advaita, Advaita alone can accommodate all the lower standpoints beautifully. That is why you find, see, the rishis of the Upanishads, they were all great harmonizers. Krishna was a great harmonizer because Krishna's Bhagavad Gita is what? It is Advaitamrita Varshinim. Gita is what? It is just the showering of the nectar of Advaitic wisdom. Krishna was a great teacher of Advaita. Shankaracharya was a great harmonizer. He harmonized all the so-called conflicting systems of thought of his time. Sri Ramakrishna was a great harmonizer. Harmonizing is possible, synchronizing is possible only from the highest standpoint of Advaita. If you go down to the lower standpoints, you cannot harmonize everybody. That's why all the dualists you see, they are constantly conflicting. They are in a conflict zone. They are fighting with each other. They cannot accommodate other people. Now this is a very sensitive issue, we know. All over the world, all these fights and quarrels between different religions, it is owing to only one thing. The partial picture of reality. They lack this complete picture of reality which Vedas alone give. And that complete picture of reality is what is Advaita. Nothing else. It is from this Advaitic standpoint alone, everything can be harmonized. I'm just reminded, Gaudapadacharya's that beautiful statement. Gaudapadacharya says, Asparsha yogo vainama, sarva sattva sukho hitaha, avivado aviruddhascha, deshitastam namamya. Gaudapadacharya says, you see, this Advaita is known as Asparsha yoga. It's a beautiful term. There's no time to elaborate on it. This Asparsha yoga, where there is no two, there is only one. This so-called Advaitic vision is the only one vision which is avivada and aviruddhascha. We have no virodhi. We have no virodhi. We have no so-called vivada, no disputation with anybody. That is a beautiful picture which comes from Advaita. So everything gets harmonized only from the Advaitic standpoint. Now Sri Ramakrishna was a great harmonizer of the modern times. Again, exemplifying the principle of the Vedas. So in this way, my dear devotees, if you just look into Sri Ramakrishna's gospel, you will find all these so-called universal, eternal principles that we find in the Vedas get embodied in Sri Ramakrishna's teaching. As I said in the beginning, in a very technical sense, you cannot equate Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna with the Vedas, because Vedas are apaurushaya. They don't have an origin in a person. Sri Ramakrishna's Gospel came into existence with the advent of Sri Ramakrishna. Bhagavad Gita came into existence with the advent of Sri Krishna. So anything which has got an origin, it cannot be, technically speaking, in a strict sense, it cannot be equated with the Vedas. At the same time, its value and importance doesn't get diminished. It is still very important. These wonderful words of Sri Krishna, Shankaracharya and Sri Ramakrishna, they are all the commentaries on the Vedas. And today, in the modern time, Sri Ramakrishna's Gospel is one of the finest commentaries on the Vedas. This is what Swami Vivekananda tells us in his beautiful writing, Hinduism and Sri Ramakrishna. That's why reading Sri Ramakrishna's Gospel is very important, and it is very wonderful. The simple language, the clarity, the stress, the emphasis, and the way Sri Ramakrishna presents that supreme reality in his most beautiful manner. One small thing which comes to my mind is he conveys these universal truths in and through beautiful analogies. Technically speaking, it is known as upamana pramana. In the Upanishad, the rishis also, they convey the great truths in and through upama, analogy. Shankaracharya in his works, Aparokshanabhuti, it is completely upamana pramana, using different analogy, different small things from our day-to-day life to convey the great truths of the Upanishads. So in Sri Ramakrishna's Gospel also you will find, in and through beautiful stories, Sri Ramakrishna conveying those truths in a most beautiful and convincing manner. That's why, in a way, we have to say that Sri Ramakrishna's Gospel is the most modern commentary on the Vedas. Thank you so much.